My name's Daniel Mercer. I'm 48 years old, and until last spring, I thought my marriage was unshakable. 20 years with the same woman, one home, one shared dream. That's supposed to mean something. Turns out, it only means as much as your paycheck. We live in Raleigh, North Carolina, in one of those quiet neighborhoods where every lawn looks the same and every neighbor waves whether they like you or not. For years, I worked maintenance at a manufacturing plant just off the I-40. Not glamorous work, but steady, the kind of job that puts food on the table, keeps the lights on, and buys the occasional weekend trip to the coast. My wife, Lisa, used to say that's what she loved about me, that I was steady. She'd brag about it when we were younger. Daniel doesn't chase money, she'd tell her friends. He builds life with his hands. I believed her, but somewhere along the line, steady stopped sounding like a compliment. It began subtle, little comments that didn't sound cruel at first. When the plant cut overtime hours, she'd sigh at the dinner table. "Guess we'll have to skip the summer trip this year," she'd say, stirring her tea like it was my fault. Or she'd bring up her cousin Megan's husband, the one who made six figures in tech, and ask, "Doesn't it ever bother you that some men just have more ambition?" I try not to take it personally. Marriage teaches you to pick your battles. But those comments piled up like dust on an old shelf. I still remember the night it all shifted. We were sitting in the living room, me on the recliner, Lisa on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she always did. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching. Out of nowhere, she said, "You know, Daniel, sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to be married to someone who actually made something of himself." I looked up slowly. "What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't even glance my way. "It means I'm tired of scraping by. You've been at that same job 15 years, and what do we have to show for it? A mortgage and a secondhand car." That's when it hit me. This wasn't frustration talking. It was contempt. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. Just sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, realizing she'd been drifting away one small insult at a time. In the Army, they taught us something about quiet enemies, the ones who smile while loading the weapon. That's what Lisa had become. She wasn't leaving yet, but she'd already started walking away in her heart. That night, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't chase her approval anymore. I'd just do what I do best, keep my head down, stay steady, and pay attention. Respect doesn't beg to stay. And somewhere deep down, I already knew she was about to learn that the hard way. The following months felt like walking through fog. Lisa stopped hiding her disappointment. She didn't shout, didn't argue. She just carried it around like a perfume, something you could smell the moment she walked into a room. Every evening was the same routine. I'd come home covered in dust and oil from the plant. She'd glance at the clock like I was late for something that didn't exist. Dinner was quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. Our daughter, Emma, noticed it before I did. She's 17, sharp as a tack. "Mom doesn't laugh at your jokes anymore," she said one night while helping me clean up the kitchen. I forced a smile. Guess I'm losing my touch. But kids always know when something's breaking. Lisa had started spending more time with her work friends. She managed operations for a local furniture company, mostly remote. Every other week, there was some after-hours event, networking, client dinners, marketing socials. At first, I believed her. You want to trust your spouse, you know? But one evening she came home in a dress I'd never seen before, smelling like wine and unfamiliar cologne. "You're late," I said. She shrugged. "We were celebrating a new client. Don't make it sound like a crime." I didn't argue. I just nodded. I learned a long time ago that arguing with someone who's already written you off is like trying to fix a sinking boat with a spoon. Still, I watched. Quietly. Because sometimes silence tells you everything you need to know. I started noticing small things. A second phone charger tucked behind the couch. Receipts for dinners that didn't match the company's expense reports. A sudden obsession with locking her laptop whenever I walked by. I didn't snoop. Didn't have to. When people start lying, they usually advertise it without meaning to. One Friday night, we were getting ready for a small neighborhood get-together. I was tightening my tie when Lisa looked at me in the mirror. "You don't have to come if you don't want to," she said. "Why wouldn't I?" She hesitated, applying lipstick. "It's just, they're mostly professionals. I don't want you to feel out of place." That was the first time she said it out loud, that I didn't belong in her world anymore. I went anyway. The party was at her boss's house. Big place, modern, all glass and marble. The kind of house that looks like it's allergic to fingerprints. Everyone there was dressed like success had a uniform. I could feel their eyes on me. The guy with the calloused hands and worn-out shoes. But I kept my chin up, smiled, shook hands, and listened. Lisa spent most of the night glued to one man. Tall, sharp suit, about my age, maybe a little younger. She introduced him as Evan, our regional manager. He had the kind of grin that practiced itself in the mirror. When he said, "Lisa's one of the smartest women in this company," she beamed like he'd handed her the moon. I stood there, holding my glass of water, realizing I'd been demoted from husband to background noise. That night, she barely spoke to me in the car. When we got home, she went straight upstairs, claiming she was tired. I sat in the dark living room for a long time, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. Her smile looked different there, softer, genuine. And I couldn't help wondering when exactly it turned into the smirk she wore tonight. Something had changed in Lisa. But something had changed in me, too. Because that night, for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt calm. And calm, in the hands of a betrayed man, can be dangerous. The next few weeks were a slow unraveling. Not dramatic, just quiet decay. Lisa started coming home later, claiming traffic or last-minute reports. I stopped asking questions. People tell you more by what they avoid than by what they say. She'd leave her phone face down on the counter, always on silent. One night, it buzzed while she was in the shower. Reflex made me glance. The message preview said only, "Tonight was worth every risk." I didn't need to open it. Sometimes, seeing the shadow of a truth is enough to know the whole thing. I poured myself a drink and sat at the kitchen table for a long time, letting that message echo in my head. After 20 years of marriage, betrayal doesn't land like an explosion. It lands like a slow, steady collapse. You feel the structure give way under memories you thought were solid. The next morning, Lisa was cheerful, too cheerful. She hummed while making coffee, kissed my cheek, and said, "Don't work too hard." It was all performance. The kind of sweetness people use when they're covering guilt. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I've learned in life, and from 20 years fixing machines, you never take apart what you don't understand. First, you study it. You find where the pressure's coming from. So I watched. I took mental notes. The perfume she never wore before. The hotel loyalty card that fell out of her purse. The way she started wearing jewelry I didn't buy. I'd come home from 12-hour shifts, and she'd be sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, glass of wine half empty, a look on her face like she'd just stepped out of a life she wished she hadn't come back from. One Saturday, I came in from mowing the yard. She was on the phone, whispering. When she saw me, she smiled too quickly and said, "Just catching up with Megan." Megan, the cousin who lived in Atlanta. The cousin who, apparently, had perfect timing for secret calls. That afternoon, I went out to the garage, my quiet place. Fixed an old radio just to keep my hands busy. That's when I realized something. I wasn't sad anymore. I was studying her, the way a craftsman studies a machine that started making a new noise. By early winter, the distance between us had turned into open space. We still shared a bed, but it felt like separate worlds divided by a thin mattress line. She'd roll over, phone glowing under the covers, pretending to read news. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling fan, counting the seconds between her giggles and the faint vibration of incoming messages. At the plant, my supervisor pulled me aside one day. "You look tired, Dan. Everything okay at home?" I smiled. "Just life being life." He nodded. "Sometimes it's the quiet ones that hit hardest." He was right. I didn't tell him that my wife was slipping away or that I'd started taking overtime again, not for the money, but for the silence. Because at least at work, the noise made sense. Machines break, you fix them. People break. Well, that's different. One night, around midnight, I heard her on the phone again, this time in the kitchen. Her voice was low, but not low enough. She laughed, a soft, private laugh I hadn't heard in years. Then, "He's harmless. He'll never leave that job. He's comfortable." That line stuck with me like a splinter under skin. I lay there awake until sunrise, staring at the window, watching the light crawl up the blinds. She thought I was harmless. That was her mistake. After that night, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. Rage burns too hot, too fast. This was colder, a kind of focus I hadn't felt in years. She thought I was harmless. That gave me time. And time is an advantage. A few days later, I stopped by the plant manager's office. I'm taking some unused vacation time, I told him. He looked surprised. I never took time off. Everything all right. Just need to get my head straight, I said. Some home repairs to handle. He nodded slowly. Take what you need, Dan. You've earned it. What I really needed was space to think and to plan. That week, Lisa's patterns became obvious. Tuesday and Thursday nights, she stayed out late. Friday afternoons, her texts were short and vague. Saturday mornings, she was always exhausted. The human mind craves consistency, even in deceit. She had no idea I was mapping her like a work schedule. I didn't follow her physically. Didn't need to. There's power in restraint. Instead, I looked for confirmation in smaller ways. A second set of car keys I'd never seen before. An Uber charge that didn't fit her usual routine. Hotel points tied to an account under her name. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. She wasn't hiding an affair anymore. She was building a future without me. On a gray Wednesday morning, she cornered me at breakfast. Dan, we need to talk about finances, she said. You've been at that job a long time, but maybe it's time you think bigger. I mean, you can't just stay there forever, can you? I set down my coffee. You worried about money or reputation? Her eyes flickered. I'm worried about stability. Funny, I said. That's what I thought I was providing all these years. She sighed, tired of pretending. You're a good man, Dan, but I want more out of life. Travel, nice things. Experiences. I looked at her. The same woman who once cried when we couldn't afford a honeymoon, now treating our life like a burden she couldn't wait to drop. That evening, I drove out to the edge of town, parked by the overlook that faced the old rail yard. I sat there for an hour, thinking about the years I'd given her. The nights I worked overtime so she could take classes. The car I fixed when she wanted a newer model. The birthdays she forgot because she was busy. I realized then, I didn't love her anymore. I just loved who I thought she used to be. When I got home, she was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Where were you? She asked without looking up. Thinking, I said. About what? About what comes next. She gave a half smile, the kind that says she's not listening. Don't stay up late. You've got work tomorrow. I nodded, heading upstairs. Maybe not for long, I said quietly. In that moment, I wasn't lying. Something new was already forming. A plan, an opportunity, a different kind of life. And if she wanted more, she was about to get it. Just not the way she expected. By February, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Just walls holding two strangers together out of habit. Lisa moved through our days like someone counting the hours until freedom. She'd leave earlier, come back later, and barely speak unless she had to. But she underestimated me. She thought my silence was weakness. It wasn't. It was strategy. Every morning, I got up before dawn, packed my lunch, and drove out like I was heading to the plant. What she didn't know was that I'd taken a leave of absence. The company owed me a decade's worth of unused vacation and comp time. That gave me room to move quietly. Instead of clocking in, I spent my days building something new. A few months back, a man I'd met through a maintenance subcontractor had approached me about joining a small startup that serviced manufacturing equipment, private contracts, flexible hours, and far better pay than my plant job. They needed someone who understood machinery inside and out, someone trustworthy. The kind of man who'd been overlooked his whole career. Back then, I'd turned them down. I was afraid to risk steady income. But after hearing Lisa mock my comfort, I saw it differently. She'd accused me of thinking too small. So, I decided to think bigger, not to win her back, but to build something that didn't include her. For 3 weeks, I met quietly with the partners, drew up logistics, and handled the licensing paperwork. I didn't tell Lisa a word. Every evening, I came home greasy and tired, letting her assume I was still fixing conveyor belts for $15 an hour. Meanwhile, her contempt grew bolder. One night, she laughed while talking to someone on speakerphone. The man's voice was muffled, but I caught enough. He's still there? Must be nice, having a charity case at home. She laughed, my wife, and said, yeah, well, stability has its uses. I sat in the dark hallway, listening. Calm, cold, focused. That was the night I decided exactly how this would end. Over the next few days, I gathered what mattered. Birth certificates, savings account details, mortgage documents. Everything she assumed I'd never touch. I met with an attorney downtown, a quiet, older man who'd seen this story 100 times. You don't want to destroy her, he said. You just want peace. That's right, I told him. But sometimes, peace requires precision. He nodded slowly. You've got that look. You've already made up your mind. By early March, the new company, Mercer Industrial Solutions, had its first signed contracts. I was no longer the maintenance guy punching a clock. I was part owner of a business that could out-earn my old salary in a single quarter. But I didn't announce it. Not yet. Lisa had grown comfortable treating me like a failure. She'd mocked my paycheck, called me safe, and told friends she'd outgrown me. Let her believe that a little longer. Let her think she still had the upper hand. Because soon, I'd make an announcement, one that would test the limits of her pride. And if I knew Lisa at all, pride was the only thing she valued more than money. The calm before the storm always feels deceptively peaceful. But underneath, everything's moving. She just didn't know the ground beneath her was already shifting. March brought an early warmth that year. The kind of weather that tricks you into thinking spring means new beginnings. For me, it did, just not the kind Lisa imagined. Mercer Industrial Solutions had officially launched. 3 contracts in place, 2 more pending. I spent my mornings at our new workshop near Garner, my afternoons on-site inspecting machines. The partners were solid guys, hard workers, family men who didn't talk big, just delivered. My cut after taxes already doubled what I used to make. But at home, I kept up the act. Same lunchbox, same boots, same tired smile. I wanted to see how far she'd go when she thought she'd won. It didn't take long. Lisa started forgetting to cook dinner. There was always some excuse, didn't realize how late it was, or I grabbed something with friends. I stopped waiting for her and made my own meals. She didn't even notice. On March 10th, she came home late again. Hair perfect, perfume sharp, attitude sharper. You could have at least cleaned up the kitchen, she said, stepping around my boots by the door. I looked up from the paperwork I'd been reviewing. Didn't realize I was on your payroll. She froze for half a second, then laughed. Cute. You know, maybe if you had a better paycheck, I wouldn't sound like your boss. I smiled faintly. You think a paycheck makes the man? In this world? Absolutely. Good to know. She rolled her eyes and headed upstairs, leaving the faint echo of heels on hardwood, a sound that used to mean something. That night, I sat on the porch, sipping coffee, staring out at the quiet street. Neighbors' porch lights flicked on one by one, each a reminder that ordinary people still respected the simple things: effort, family, decency. Lisa had forgotten all that somewhere between envy and ambition. When I came back inside, I found her laptop open on the counter. She was upstairs showering. I didn't touch it, didn't need to. An email notification sat right there on the screen. It's settled. Next weekend, same cabin, no interruptions this time. I stared at those words, my pulse steady. After 20 years, the truth still stung, not because of the betrayal itself, but because of how easy she made it look. I walked to the window and looked up at the faint glow of the bathroom light. Water running, steam fogging the glass. She was singing softly to herself. That was when I knew I'd made the right choice. Not to explode, not to confront her, but to prepare. People like Lisa collapse under the weight of their own lies. You just have to give them the space to do it. The next morning, over breakfast, I mentioned something casually. Plants downsizing again. Might be layoffs coming. She didn't even blink. Maybe it's time you find something that pays better, she said, pouring herself coffee. You can't keep doing the same thing forever. I smiled to myself. You're right. Maybe it's time for a change. She nodded absently, already scrolling through her phone. She had no idea how close to the truth she was. Because the man she kept calling a failure was about to make a move she'd never recover from. And the announcement I was planning, the one that would make her pack instantly, was only days away. The following Friday started like any other. The morning coffee, the silence over breakfast. The look she gave me, half boredom, half contempt. I'd gotten used to it by then. What she didn't know was that I'd been counting down to this day for weeks. That night, Lisa was getting ready for another work weekend. I knew exactly where she was going, the cabin mentioned in that email. She packed light, humming under her breath, texting someone between folded shirts. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand, pretending to balance bills. You okay? She asked, slipping her overnight bag by the door. Never better, I said. You? She smiled faintly. You'll be fine, Daniel. Try not to burn the house down while I'm gone. I looked up slowly, met her eyes. Before you go, there's something you should probably know. She frowned. What's that? I quit the plant. The color drained from her face. You what? Yeah, I said calmly. Last week. Figured 15 years of crawling under machines was enough. Found something new. She blinked, processing. Something new? Daniel, are you insane? You can't just walk away from your only stable income. How are we supposed to? Relax, I interrupted, folding the paper in front of me. It's not exactly unemployment. I started my own company. She laughed, short, sharp, almost cruel. Your own company? Doing what exactly? Fixing coffee makers? Industrial maintenance. Full contracts, multiple clients. Already booked through summer. She tilted her head, half smirking. So, how much are you making with this grand venture? I reached for my coffee, took a slow sip. Let's just say more in a month than I made in half a year at the plant. For the first time in months, she stopped smiling. You're joking. No joke. We signed 2 government contracts last week. I'll be overseeing operations, managing a small team. And since we're expanding, I'll be gone for a bit. Lots of travel, higher profile. She blinked, her brain struggling to catch up. Higher profile? What do you mean? Well, I said, sliding a thin envelope across the table. The company's relocating part of the team to Charlotte. I'm moving there next month. She froze. You're moving? That's right. Housing's included. Salary's double. I'm taking Emma with me once school ends. She deserves a stable home. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For once, Lisa had no words. Wait, she stammered. You can't just, you're leaving me? I looked her straight in the eye. No, Lisa. You left a long time ago. I'm just catching up. Silence filled the room. Heavy, electric, final. She tried to laugh it off. You think you can just walk away and start fresh? I smiled faintly. That's exactly what I'm doing. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. Does this have something to do with me? I shook my head. Lisa, this has everything to do with me. I'm done living small for someone who can't see value beyond a paycheck. She stared at me for a long time, and I could see it, the panic setting in. The realization that the man she mocked was the one thing keeping her life steady. When she finally spoke, her voice was brittle. You're serious? Completely. The overnight bag she'd packed so carefully suddenly looked out of place by the door. She stared at it, then at me, like she didn't know whether to go or stay. And that's when it happened, the exact moment I'd pictured. She zipped up that bag, turned, and walked out without another word. I didn't stop her, didn't ask where she was going. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't a speech or a fight. It's a quiet exit when the other person finally realizes you were the foundation all along. Lisa didn't come home that night. The next morning, her side of the closet was half empty, clothes gone, perfume bottles missing, drawers left open. The silence that used to sting now felt clean, like fresh air after a storm. I made myself coffee and sat at the kitchen table where she'd stood the night before. Her cup was still there, half full and cold. The lipstick mark on the rim looked like a punctuation mark at the end of a long, bitter sentence. Emma came downstairs an hour later, rubbing her eyes. Mom left early? Yeah, I said quietly. She's taking some time away. Emma studied me for a moment, the way kids do when they sense the truth behind polite words. You okay? I am now, I said. By that afternoon, word spread through town faster than I expected. Lisa hadn't gone to the work retreat. Turns out, she'd shown up at that cabin, the same one she used to visit with her so-called regional manager, Evan, only to find someone else already there. His wife. Evan had been lying to her, too. His wife had intercepted his emails, figured out the weekend plans, and decided to greet them personally. What happened next was apparently a scene straight out of a bad soap opera. Shouting, thrown wine glasses, one expensive car speeding away into the night. By Sunday, Lisa's perfect world had collapsed. Evan's wife filed complaints with his company. HR opened an investigation, and by Tuesday, he was fired. Lisa's name was all over the internal emails. By the end of the week, she was out too. Meanwhile, Mercer Industrial Solutions kept climbing. The new contracts came through, and our reputation spread quickly through the manufacturing network. I hired 3 former co-workers from the plant. Good men who'd been overlooked like I was. We built something solid, something real. A few weeks later, Lisa called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Daniel, she said softly. Her voice was different, Fragile, smaller somehow. I've been thinking about what you said. About leaving. I let a bead of silence stretch. Yeah, I made mistakes, she said. Big ones. I thought I wanted more, but I don't even know what I wanted anymore. I looked out the window at the early spring light spilling over the yard. I know what you wanted, I said. You wanted to feel superior. But the thing about pride is, it doesn't pay the bills. She started to cry quietly. Can we talk? Please? Lisa, I said, keeping my tone calm. You already said everything when you packed that bag. She sniffled. So that's it. That's it. Before hanging up, I added, I don't hate you. I just finally see you clearly. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. By June, Emma and I had moved into a small house in Charlotte. Nothing fancy, but ours. We painted the porch together, hung wind chimes, and built a small garden out back. Every morning before work, I'd sip coffee and listen to the quiet hum of a life I'd rebuilt from scratch. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret walking away after so many years. I don't. You can rebuild a house after a storm, but you can't rebuild trust once it's been laughed at. Lisa ended up working part-time at a real estate office 2 towns over. Folks say she keeps to herself now. Quieter, humbled. I don't take pleasure in that. Life has a way of handing out its own consequences. As for me, I learned something simple but hard. Respect doesn't beg to stay. It just leaves quietly and takes its piece with it. When she mocked my small paycheck, I thought I was the one coming up short. Turns out, I was just rich in the things she'd never understand. Integrity, patience, and the strength to walk away with dignity. And that kind of wealth doesn't run out. If you like this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts below. Haven't subscribed yet? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.